Gaming leaks are never normally something I pay much attention to, but in this case I just had to do some digging because whenever Silent Hill enters the gaming news, there grows a little wet spot in my pants. Silent Hill fans have grown accustomed to what could have been since the cancelling of Silent Hills, and we've also grown accustomed to the fair share of lies or misunderstandings. Before I continue, there are links in the description for all the sources I've made mention of, so if you want to go ahead and check that stuff out, it's all there. Anyway, a few days ago, a handful of images were leaked by an individual going by the name of Dusk Golem on Twitter. The images are apparently dated to 2020, so are quite old by now, but they are in keeping with the general vibe of a Silent Hill game. We have a messy room, perhaps a baby's bedroom, a girl with self-deprecating post-it notes revealed underneath her paper-like skin, and a red-looking corridor with a bunch of post-it notes stuck to the walls, and a weird-looking female figure looming at the end. There is also a similar image to this that appears to be the same corridor with a less aggressive red hue. One of the post-its uses the very British term minga, a word for an ugly person, and one of the post-its on the wall references Monty Python's The Life of Brian. As an Englishman myself, I haven't heard the term minga used in a good while, so if these images are real, they really are dated. On the topic of that post-it note face, I have to say it's super cringe, and even though they're from 2020, this image takes me back to a time when these lads were all the rage. Now, Dusk Golem himself gives us the caveat that a lot of details should be taken with a grain of salt. He makes the claim that he was informed by sources, who he never names, that Konami were shopping around the Silent Hill IP to various developers, including Supermassive Games, who are the devs behind Until Dawn. One of the more peculiar claims is that Sony were mediating between Kojima and Konami to get the series up and running again, but besides this being quite unbelievable, even if it were true, none of the devs that Konami have entered discussions with wanted to buy the IP, including Sony. Dusk Golem also claims that one of his unnamed sources can concretely confirm that Masahiro Ito, one of the original artists on the early Silent Hill games, was contributing to this new title. Oh, and apparently this isn't the only title being developed. Dusk claims he was also provided with the claim that there will be a soft reboot and an episodic style entry into the Silent Hill series. So, Masahiro Ito back on board? Well, in 2020, the same year these leaked images are from, Ito did hint on Twitter that he was working on a new Silent Hill, but he did also state that he hoped it didn't get cancelled. He also famously stated that he wished he had never created the iconic Pyramid Head, citing not getting properly paid when it came to Konami's manufacturing of statues of the character. Thus, it seems Ito harbours some legitimate hostility towards Konami, and would be unlikely to want to work with them again, lending credence to the idea that this iteration of Silent Hill was not being developed by Konami. Then there were the rumours that Bloober Team, of Layers of Fear and the Medium fame, were working on a new Silent Hill project. This was based off a strategic partnership that Bloober had entered with Konami, not to mention that the Medium featured soundtrack contributions from former Team Silent musician Akira Yamaoka. Also, a personal observation, and one that is echoed by other members of the community, is that the image of the girl with post-it notes on her face is such a cringe and facile treatment of trauma that it's trademarked Bloober, given the backlash they faced in the same vein with the Medium. However, Bloober denied that they were ever working on a Silent Hill game, whilst also failing to clarify the nature of their relationship with Konami beyond exchanging know-how. As for the other claims Dusk Golem makes, well, we have to take him at his word really. He assures us that he himself has proof that the images at least are legitimate, although he doesn't share the proof that he has and keeps his sources anonymous. However, he does leave open the possibility that these images may have been from a Silent Hill game that is no longer in development, which matches up with Ito's tweets about working on a new game but hoping it doesn't get cancelled. The dates match up too. There is another thing to consider here. Konami's shameless production of Silent Hill Pachinko machines. In Japan, as you probably know, gambling is largely, though not entirely, illegal. One such thing that seems to have evaded tight legislation are Pachinko machines, and this is because the government treat them as a cultural and leisurely activity. It rakes in around $200 billion a year, and so you can see why a profit-driven company like Konami would want to capitalise. That said, in 2018, there was a gradual government effort to tackle addiction issues surrounding Pachinko, altering the nature of the machines to make players spend less and receive lower payouts. it can be argued that the most profitable way to capitalise on big IPs such as Silent Hill is to return to the gaming market, rather than relying on what may be diminishing Pachinko profits. A quick look at Konami's profits for the last quarter reveal that it has generated a lot of revenue from free-to-play games such as Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and some non-Western releases like Montaro Dentetsu. Also, despite having a disastrous launch, eFootball, the free-to-play successor to Pro Evolution Soccer, demonstrates that Konami are still in the business of developing games, even if they do rely heavily on debatable sources of revenue. On another topic, Dusk Golem has shown in the past to be quite a reliable source of information. People cite his Resident Evil Village leaks, saying his again anonymous insider spoke of Ethan as the protagonist, sticking with the first-person perspective of Resident Evil 7, being set in a snowy village and the addition of werewolves. These did all turn out to be true, although it does seem obvious that Capcom would stick with Ethan and the first person due to the success of Resident Evil 7, and also the fact that first person perspective seems to be the de facto perspective for most AAA horror games these days. Oh, and did I mention that Dusk Golem's leaked images tweet was swiftly DMCA'd by Konami? Yep, that did happen, adding to speculation that these images are of a legitimate game, and given what happened with PT, this is peak Konami behavior. With all this in mind, Reddit user The Ladder Stabber gives us some valid points to consider. They point out that Dusk has a track record of being correct only about half of the time he leaks, and further, a Metal Gear developer claimed that Konami have cancelled, quote, a revival of a specific IP. This developer was Ikuya Nakamura, and he tweeted that this revival was canned in 2019. He doesn't make any more tangible references to what the title was, and in all reality, it could have been one of Konami's many IPs. What makes it linked to Silent Hill is the date somewhat lining up with the fact that the images leaked by Dusk are apparently from 2020. That said, Dusk makes the claim that Silent Hill was being shopped around by Konami, rather than being developed by them directly, and this is in keeping with Konami's treatment of the franchise post-Team Silent. Finally, I think we ought to consider what survival horror scapegoat Tom Hewlett had to say on the leaks. He says, if a studio has multiple people sending materials to a known leaker, they are not professional enough to do the game justice. He goes on to cite this lack of professionalism as partial proof that the leaks are fake. The title of this video poses the argument of why these latest leaks could be true. In short, they very much could be, but I think in all reality they likely refer to a game that was in development. Honestly, it's my opinion that this is yet another case of Silent Hill fans being offered a vision of something that could have been, rather than something that is.